Hi, my name is Sabne Raznik, and you have found the channel where I do what I call mini readings here on YouTube, which means I just read one poem, sometimes my own work if I have something new out or I'm promoting something, sometimes other people's work. I get permission where I'm able, and where I am not, then I read work that is publicly available somewhere else, or in most cases in the public domain, or so I hope. And the goal here, if you go through my channel, because it's been here since 2011, the goal here is to create like an intro to world poetry. So like there's poems here from people from all over the world, and I read the English language versions because that is the language I'm most familiar with, and because it is the language of the internet. But of course, if you find a poem that you really like and you are able to read it in the original language, I encourage you to do that, because poetry in its original language and poetry in translation are two different things. It's like two different art forms almost. So if you can read them both, more power to you. Read them right next to each other, enjoy it, right? If you're not, then enjoy the translations the same way I do. That's why poetry is in translation, so that those of us who can't read the original language have access to the poetry of other languages and the poetry of the world. I'm a big fan of world poetry, which is why I do this, and that's why I've never monetized this channel. So I'm not walking on anybody's copyrights. I don't want to do that. I just want to share the joy of poetry. The idea is sort of, and I'm not claiming to be on the same level as these people at all. It's kind of like the LeVar Burton thing with Reading Rainbow, and then after Reading Rainbow was canceled, he went on to make a podcast for adults where he would read mostly sci-fi short stories. And then this year, he brought an end to that podcast, and so that he could move on to other things. And also, I suspect it may be, and I'm not sponsoring any of these people, of course, because this channel is not monitored, but just giving out facts. I heard, and I don't know how true this is, that PBS was going to bring back shows like Reading Rainbow and Mr. Rogers and those old shows like that we grew up watching, Gen X grew up watching, and give them their own channel and make it available for free for adults to watch as like a comforting background noise, they said. But I don't know about you. It's like I don't think I'll be playing it as comforting background noise. I'll be getting my blanket and my little tea, my cup of tea and whatever, and I'll be sitting down and actually watching it because those were awesome shows, and brings back lots of fond memories, you know. I mean, yeah, sure, at this point, in a lot of ways, they're outdated, especially where they might talk about social issues or whatever, but a lot of the principles and stuff are really still applicable, and it's just good fond memories there, right? So that may be why he brought him into the podcast, because Reading Rainbow is coming back in a different way, but it's coming back. And you know, he is getting older, and maybe he's well beyond well, I don't know, I don't want to say well beyond retirement age. I'm sorry, LeVar. I mean, I'm just now coming to grips with the fact that I'm old enough to be a grandmother at this point, even though I never had children, because I just didn't have that opportunity. It wasn't it just wasn't part of my life, I guess. It wasn't to be for me. But you know, I'm thinking maybe that's why he brought it into that podcast, and he has other things he wants to do. I mean, he's an actor, and an actor in movies and things like that, so I'm sure that there's other things he wants that time available for, and we're very grateful to him for spending so much time reading to us, right? And so, but anyway, that's what gave me the idea, because I was like, look, there's been this avenue that he's kept open, reading stories to children for so long and then reading them to adults. And you know, even after Reading Rainbow was canceled, he turned Reading Rainbow into an app in order to keep that available to children in some capacity. And then he took it a step further by making that podcast so he could continue to read to the adults who were like, but Reading Rainbow, even as adults, you know. And because it's a comfort thing being read, especially when you're sick. It's like, I want to be read too, right? You just get used to certain things. So and I thought, well, there's been that avenue available for short stories and things like that. Why not? Why can't there be something like that for poetry, for those of us who enjoy poetry? Well, there's YouTube, supposed to be TV for everybody to do whatever they want to on, although YouTube now has its own censorship along with the rest of the internet, right? But why can't we do that for poetry? And so that's what this channel is supposed to be. And my health issues have kept me from making it a regular weekly thing. And because it's been a channel for so long, like, there have been things happen, like I would move and not have the equipment to film for a while, sometimes a couple of years, and then I would come back. I mean, you'll see that if you go back and look, and you'll see the gaps and stuff. It started out with just me reading my own poetry, and then after some years, I was like, you know, I'm going to just never monetize. I made the decision to never monetize the channel, and I was like, you know what, I'm going to open this up for other people's poetry too, and just make it like, and do this with it, what I'm talking about. And we'll make it a place where it can be like an intro to world poetry, where I just read a poem video that I happen to like or I find from some culture in the world, and then occasionally I can read my own poetry too, or I can upload readings that I happen to be a part of digitally if they get recorded, or something, which does occasionally happen. But you know, it's like kind of a hodgepodge. So go back and see what you can find. If you would like to subscribe to the channel, I mean, I'm not one of those people that's all about the algorithm, but hey, we all like some outside validation every once in a while. And if you enjoy the channel, if you enjoy sharing some poésie joie, subscribe, let me know you're out there. that would really help my heart. But it would also help you to know when the videos do get uploaded. Over this past year, in 2024, I decided I was going to try harder to upload on a regular basis, which my health makes a little difficult to do. So what I started doing was I started filming videos in blogs, mostly, so that I could film several videos at a time and then put them out one at a time over a period of time. And that's been working, because that has allowed me to upload a video once a month or so, to keep things fairly regularly. Now, today's video, the thing that's happening with that is I have been making plans with someone to have like this little meeting, on a digital meeting together, and we'll make a plan and we get all cleaned up and put on our makeup and we're all ready to go, and then it falls through last minute, and then we go, okay, well, we'll do it in a couple days. So I get all cleaned up, put on makeup, and it falls through. So we make a plan, okay, we'll do it in a couple days. Well, today was our second try at it, and we made plans to try for a third time in a couple days. And I was like, look, I've put in all this effort to get pretty and have, I mean, you know, relatively speaking pretty, because I'm getting older, but anyway, put in all this effort to get pretty and clean, wash my hair and stuff, and put on makeup and stuff. Let's not waste the makeup. Makeup's getting expensive these days, right? Let's not waste it. since we're not able to have our little meeting we were supposed to have, I could at least take this time to film a video for the channel, right? And then in a couple days, we'll make our third attempt on this meeting, and hopefully all of us will be able to get together to have this meeting. So I thought, okay, spontaneous filming of a YouTube video here. So what can I come up with for a plan for our poem today? Well, I thought best place ever to go to for that, because it's one of my favorite websites for world poetry, poetryinternational.com. It originally started out as Poetry International Web, and they've since I first discovered it in like 2003 or something, I don't even remember, they have moved to a whole new website and everything. I remember when I first found out, I was like, this is the most amazing resource for world poetry. I'm going to read every poem on there. But they are constantly adding new poets and new poems in new countries, right? And so I have never been able to reach that goal. And here we are like 20 years later, and they've moved websites and everything, and every year they have a whole festival, and it's just amazing though. So anyway, I thought, well, I need a poem, like very spontaneously here. So I got on their website and I said, let's try to, as randomly as possible, pick a poet that from a country that has not been featured on this channel before. So what I ended up landing on was a poet named Dan Coman from Romania. He was born in 1975, and we are going to read his poem Impossible to Move. So, and the picture they have here of him, for me anyway, because Gen X and he's Gen X too, so, but I don't know what your references would be for this, but to me he looks like a Bono of the 1990s or 1980s Bruce Springsteen. It's a black and white photo of him, and he's more like 1980s Bruce Springsteen. It's a black and white photo of him, and he's smoking a cigarette, and he just looks very 1980s Bruce Springsteen to me. But anyway, Dan Coman from Romania, born in 1975, and if you want to read the poem on the Poetry International website, where they also have the original language version right here with it. You know, you can click and see it right here on the website. I will be putting the link to the website in the description box. I do that where I can. If I don't put the link to the actual website whenever I share other people's poetry, I will at least give you some indication of where I got it from in the tags, or I will put, you know, if I don't put the actual link, I will put the title of the website or something to give you an indication of where it came from. Okay, but this time I'm gonna try my best to put the link in the description box. Now, I'm filming this on June 24th, 2024. When it actually gets uploaded, I don't know, because like I said, I have filmed a whole block of videos already that I plan on releasing month by month for the next while. I think I'm all set up for the rest of this year and then some. So I don't know when exactly this particular video will get uploaded. But sometime over the rest of this year, or even the beginning of 2025. But I'm going to leave this tab open in this browser, and hopefully I will remember that I made this promise to put that link in the description box. And if that link is not there, then I will at least have it put down that it came from poetryinternational.com. It will be somewhere in the description, some indication of that, okay? So that you will be able to go back and find the source where I found it. There will always, in my videos, there's always something like that. Like I said, if not the full-on link, then there will be some kind of indication somewhere in the description where I got it. Okay? Sometimes I read straight out of the books. Sometimes you will see me hold. It's because I have books stacked up here. Is the reason why I reached over and touched that. Sometimes you will see me actually holding the book in my hand. In the case where I get them from websites, I'll tell you that too. But there's always something in the description box to tell you where I got it. Because, like I said, I'm not here to walk on people's copyrights. I'm just here to share the joy. That's what this is about. That's what this is about. Because isn't that what LeVar Burton was all about? It was all about sharing the joy too. So, all right. Impossible to Move by Dan Coman. I'm impossible to move. There is nothing inside me. Still, I'm impossible to move with the force of only one man. Like a massive piece of living room furniture. Like anything that means nothing in itself. But I talk. I talk until the skin of my cheeks bursts. I never stop talking. All my force gathers like a spring inside my mouth and mercilessly beats out sound after sound, phrase after phrase. Nobody ever seems to get tired of understanding nothing of what I say. Nobody seems annoyed because there's nobody left. That's how I was born, straight out of the ground, impossible to move, directly with words outside mine, exactly like this, like anything else that means nothing in itself. I love that, probably because I relate to that so much. I don't know about you, but one of the ways that I have social anxiety so bad, but it's part of growing up as a disabled person, and I'm going to go on a storytelling hour. I hope y'all don't mind. I do this sometimes. I was part of the generation in the United States, because that's where I live and grew up. I was part of that generation of disabled children in the United States that helped to push the passing of the Americans with Disabilities Act in 1990. I was 11 when it passed, and I was 11 years old when it passed, and I was part of that civil rights movement that got it passed, right? I was the first disabled child to be allowed to go to school on a fairly equal footing with the able-bodied children in my county. And this is going to sound presumptuous to some people, and they might even take it as racist. I don't mean it that way. It's just a basis for comparison to help you understand what it was like for me going to school. It was very much like I was the black kid being integrated into the white school, because that was my experience. I had to fight for the right to be allowed to go, to be in those classes with those able-bodied kids. I had to fight for the right to ride the bus. I had to fight for the right to have an aide to help me carry my lunch tray because I couldn't carry my lunch tray myself. And every little thing along the way that I needed like that, it became a fight to get it. And I'm talking about a fight that went all the way to the governor of the state before it would get settled. My mom had to literally tie herself to the stairs of the County Board of Education building to get anything done. And it got to the point where if she had to call the Board of Education about anything for 20 years after that, if she had to call the Board of Education for anything, whoever picked up the phone and said hello, if she answered and said this is such and such name, that person was automatically fired for speaking to her. And that's not an exaggeration. But anyway, I mean, that's who I am. And I was doing that at 3 and 4 and 5 years old. So I was part of that. And so I had, when they did allow me to go to public school and be in the same classes with these able-bodied kids, I was not allowed at first to associate with him during recess because we still had, Gen X. We still had outside recess where you went out and played on the playground, monkey bars and middle slides and all of that. But I was not allowed to play with the rest of the kids on the playground toys. I had to sit, there was a bench where the teachers would sit. I had to sit not on the bench because that was for the teachers. I had to sit in the dirt next to the bench and literally play in the dirt and make like little fences and stuff in the dirt, and that was my recess. Because I wasn't allowed to play with the other kids. I had to fight for that right. And stuff like that. I still plainly remember the day when I finally won the right to get on the slide and go down the slide the first time. And it's funny because I got up to the top and I went to sit down to slide down, and because I have cerebral palsy, so falling is part of it. Always has been and always will be as long as I have breath in my body. It's just part of the condition. I finally won my ride to get on that slide, and I climbed all the way up to the top, the way you do to sit down and slide down. And I got to the top, and I was in the process of sitting down, and I fell from the very top off the side. Woo! And ripped my dress because I was wearing my favorite dress that my mom had made for me, because she used to make all her clothes back then, because we had to live off my money because she couldn't go out and get a job because she had to be there to take care of me because disabled kid, but anyway, not your conventional family, okay. But anyway, so and my dress, when I fell off the side, my dress got caught on the top of the ladder and ripped my dress, and I was real sad because that was my favorite dress. Anyway, that was and then all the teachers were like, see, this is why we wouldn't let you out there. And Mom's like, yeah, sure it was. No, you wouldn't let her up there just because you were just being you. But anyway, so as a result, of having to always not be allowed into situations and having to literally fight for my right to be in social situations or any kind of situation, because I was viewed as inferior and not even human by these people because I was disabled. And a lot of people assumed that because I was physically disabled that I must have been intellectually disabled as well, or however, I don't know what, because the acceptable terminology changes over time, and I understand why, because whatever the acceptable terminology is, prejudiced people will turn it against you and use it as an insult until you view it as derogatory, and so the terminology changes. I understand that because I have some wounds myself around terminology that used to be considered acceptable that was used against me, and now when I hear it I flinch because it feels like somebody has literally cussed me out. So whatever the acceptable terminology is now around those things, I don't mean to offend anybody if the terms that I'm using are no longer acceptable, because I don't know. But anyway, they would assume because I was physically disabled that I must be mentally challenged too, so they would treat me like that. And I've always been spicy. Spicy nice, I guess, sassy. That's just part of my personality, and if you knew my aunts and uncles and great aunts and uncles and great great aunts and uncles, that's just how my family is. So when people would do that, I'd be like, well, if that's what you want me to be, that's what you'll get, and that's what I would give them. Not proud of that, but that's what I would do. I'd be like, oh, okay, if that's what you want me to be, okay, I'm going to draw on myself, and I'm going to pee on myself, and that's what I'm going to give you. I'm going to act like that for sure. And my mom would have to come in and be like, Amy, if you do that again, I'm gonna, in front of everybody. And I'd be like, oh, Mom! you know. Um, but then everybody would be ashamed because then everybody would be like, oh, so I've been treating her like this the whole time and she's known exactly what I was doing because she's smart. Yes, honey. Yes, honey. Well, anyway, because of that whole situation of being, that whole situation growing up in a war zone pretty much, it has caused me to have lifelong social anxiety, as you can understand, because I don't know what able-bodied people expect out of me when I walk into a room. Well, I know what prejudiced able-bodied people expect out of me when I walk in a room. And I can pretty much tell when I look in people's eyes what they're going to do. The eyes tell you everything. There's very few people that can look me in the eye and hold my gaze. Right? You know immediately when you look somebody in the eye whether they're prejudicing against you or not. And I don't know. It's just created this whole situation where I'm just extremely socially awkward as a human being, as an adult. So one of the ways my social anxiety manifests, even in situations where I can tell the people around me are going to treat me like a decent adult, which feels really strange to me. I'm not used to being treated like a decent human being. It feels good, but it feels weird too. It feels like I should be on guard for the other shoe to drop, It's like, oh, they're being nice to me. They're actually treating me like a human. Uh-oh, what's wrong? Kind of thing, One of the ways that manifests is that I start talking and can't stop. Even though I know that I'm dominating the conversation and nobody else can talk, and I hate myself for it. But I can't make myself shut up. And this poem, he's like, all my force gathers like a spring inside my mouth and mercilessly beats out sound after sound, phrase after phrase. I see myself in this. And I know I'm not the only person that does that. I know that that's like a normal social awkwardness thing that some people do. Like some people who are socially awkward get really shy and really quiet and don't speak at all, and they stay in the corner, right? And then others of us, we get like really socially awkward and we just like but that's what makes a great poem, isn't it? Is whenever you read it and you see yourself in it. I was thinking about that too when I was watching I've been watching, because right now on Peacock they have some of the Andy Griffith seasons, not all of them. The Andy Griffith Show, which I decided to watch it through because nostalgia factor. It was always on TV. My granddaddy was always watching it when he was alive. It was one of those things. And I thought, I usually get a Peacock subscription for during the Triple Crown season, and then when the Triple Crown season is over, I delete my subscription till next year. So I decided to watch the Andy Griffith seasons that are on there, and then before I drop my subscription until next year. And I was watching it, and Andy Griffith's show started repeating stories really, really quick in its life. Like by season 3, they were already starting to repeat plot lines in their episodes. And it went on for 8 seasons, and the reason why it was canceled was not because its ratings dropped, but because Aunt B left. And even then, they tried to revive it without Aunt B under a different name. I think they were going to call it Mayberry or something. But what ended up ending it in the end altogether was the networks did what's now known as the Rural Purge, where they went through and they just dumped all of the popular TV shows of that time, like Green Acres and Beverly Hillbillies and Hee Haw and Andy Griffith's show, all of them. Just dumped all of them in favor of shows that were set in urban environments and showed a higher class lifestyle, a lifestyle that required more money to maintain. because people in, the population in the United States had shifted more towards to the urban areas, and people were living lifestyles that required more money to maintain by the 70s. So they shifted the TV shows to reflect that. But what's funny is, or funny in the sense of strange, I guess, ironic, is that when they did the roll, that's one of those words that's really difficult for me to say, roll, purge, all of those shows were still at peak popularity. And that's the reason why they continued to play the reruns for decades afterwards. Even after they canceled all the shows and moved on to others, they continued to do reruns for decades after, right? But I noticed, by season 3, they were of the Andy Griffith show. They were already like regurgitating plot lines, like they had. For example, this is just one example that I noticed. They have this whole plot line where the town decides, usually because Barney hatches some harebrained scheme, but it happens in different ways, but it's usually Barney. The town decides that Andy's getting married, and shenanigans ensue because neither Andy nor his girlfriend know about this. But the town decides that it's happening, and they have engagement parties and everything. And this happens, this starts happening in season 3. By the middle of season 4, they have done this episode in different ways, 4 different times. 3 of them with the same girlfriend. Okay. And I got to thinking about that. I was like, so that goes to me, that tells me, as someone who not only consumes TV and reads books as a form of entertainment, but also to learn from them as a writer myself, a poet and a writer myself, because you have to read in order to learn your craft and in order to write well, right? I was like, okay, so what that tells me is that people don't really care so much what the story is, as long as they see themselves in it. Because with Andy Griffith, it was that whole small town vibe. People who lived in small towns, towns that had a population of 3,000 or less, could watch shows like Andy Griffith and say, oh look, that's just like my town, and that character is like so and so down the street, or hey, that's like my Uncle Joe, or so they didn't really care if the stories repeated themselves, and they didn't care how often they repeated themselves, because that all happened in a season's time. You had 4 episodes that were more or less the same. As long as they could see themselves in the story. And that's kind of what works with poetry too. You have a good poem. You know you have a good poem when it either wows you with excellent imagery or a surprising turn of phrase, or 2, is incredibly relatable. Like this poem, Impossible to Move. Or bonus points if you can do both in the same poem. That's whenever you go from having a good poem to having a great poem. Like, say, the way Seamus Heaney wrote. He managed to do both in the same poem, because he would have the surprising turn of phrase, he had amazing imagery and relatability all in the same poem. Not very many poets can pull that off. Not even, no. And I can't even do one, so I'm still working on that. But that's how you know you have a good poem if you have one of those. You have a great poem if you can do them all in one poem. because that's what people are looking for in a poem. And really, that's what people are looking for in any art form, is the ability to see themselves in it. That's why, I guess, representation is so important. The world has come a long way with representation of like different cultures and backgrounds and stuff, but I still don't see a whole lot of disabled storylines out there. Sometimes you'll see a disabled character pop up on the sidelines, usually played by an able-bodied person, and I can always tell when that messes it up. Because you can always tell it's an able-bodied person playing the disabled person. And it makes it not as believable. I've never seen a movie or a episode of a TV show where the disabled person is the primary character yet. That would just be so exciting, wouldn't it? I'm just throwing it out there. I know, if I want to see that, they always say, if there's something you want to see in a book or on TV, you should write it yourself. I need to do that, don't I? The thing with that is I think I'm too close to the material, because that's where I've lived my whole life, as being the one that breaks the boundaries for the disabled people. And I think at this point in my life, I'm too close to see it properly. Does that make any sense? I think it needs like I'm not saying that it needs to be written by an able-bodied person, no, because they would get it all wrong. I do think it does need a disabled person to look at it, but I think it to do it. But I think it needs to be a disabled person hasn't been at the helm of the crusade for disabled rights for their entire life yet. You know what I'm saying? Because I've been at this helm of disabled rights since I was 3, and I think I'm too. It needs fresh eyes. It needs somebody who's not gotten tired. I wish I had a better word there. I wish I had a better word. It's time for the newer generations to step up and do and follow up what my generation and others have already done for them, and it's their turn to be the ones to write that disabled character that gets to be the leading lady or the leading gentleman. It's their turn, because the rest of us, especially since I've been at it since I was 3 and I'm 45 now. Yeah, there's a reason why warriors back in the Middle Ages would count it an honor to die in battle in their 30s. Because you can't live your whole life like that. You can't. It's not a healthy. It's a proud place to be, to know that you were part of that history, and to have been part of that history, and to have started the snowball that just keeps getting bigger for the following generations. I'm proud of knowing that I was because there were many of us in different places. I was just for my county, right? That I was a Rosa Parks for my generation in the disabled rights field, if you want to call it that. But that might be a bit way of putting it. I don't know. It sounds like it is. Anyway, but you can't continue to live that way on into your old age. You can't stay on the battlefield after a certain age. You just can't do it anymore. I don't know how to explain it to you except that you'll understand when you reach that point. When you reach that point where you're like, you'll understand. A warrior can only take so many blows, even the best ones. There's a reason why the Vikings were like, Valhalla is the best place to go, and you get there by dying on the battlefield. None of them wanted to grow old and feel all of those wounds in their old age. Just saying. I mean, but somebody's got to be the warriors, though. That somebody's got to do that. But there comes a point where you realize it's time to pass on the baton for the next generation to be the warriors, to continue the legacy and make further change. So it's not that you failed, because you did manage to make change, but now you have to you realize you have to pass on the baton, because now you have done everything that you can do, and it's your turn to rest while the next generation does what they can do to continue making changes for those who will come after them to enjoy, and then for them to build upon. See, it just continues building. That's all. That's all. And I have got to the point where I realize I am well beyond the point of passing the baton, is what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. So, yes, that character needs to be written, but I think it needs to be written by somebody else, because I have tried to write that character, and I can't, because I'm past the point of passing the baton. That's all. That's all I'm saying. Yeah. But anyway, I thought that would, since this was very spontaneous, and I thought, why not go to one of my favorite websites and see if we can find a poem from a country that, as far as I know, I have not featured on this channel before. And if, and the idea is, if you find a poem on the library of this channel that you really like, go and explore more from that country and that culture, and read more, and go down the whole rabbit hole of the poetry of that part of the world, or that particular poet, and the poems, the poets that they like, or whatever, because I don't have time to do all that on this channel. This is just like a very, very, very superficial introduction, and there's no way that I will ever be able to cover all the poets even that I like on here. So yeah, this whole channel is just about sharing the joy. So I hope you enjoy the taking in the joy and sharing the joy as well, by sharing the videos from this channel that you enjoy, and whatever. That's all. So I'll see you next time. Yeah, okay, all right. So thank you very much for joining me here, and Donna Daggle Hunt E.